Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to our WaterSense Alliance for Water Efficiency Outdoor Webinar Series. This is the fifth in a series of webinars that we have been doing with the Alliance for Water Efficiency. We're glad to see so many of you could join us today. Just first, a little background on our series. We began this collaboration in 2015. We saw a need to try and get better relationship building between water utilities and irrigation professional audiences. And so we wanted to develop this webinar series to get at that group. And that is actually the subject of our webinar today, so that's good. Topics to date, these webinars are all available on the link at the bottom of the page and also through the Alliance for Water Efficiency YouTube page. But what we've covered to date, last spring we had a session that was focused on our sprinkler spruce-up campaign that we're actually in the process of running right now. We had a webinar on making the business case for water efficiency, which had Cobb County and Ewing talking about how they work together. We had one on consumers' attitudes towards water-efficient landscapes. That was a collaboration between Salt Lake City Water Utilities and the Utah State University Extension Program. And then finally, most recently, we had a webinar on advancing sustainable landscape designs that was led by the San Diego County Water Authority to produce the document you see on the lower right, which was really kind of a multi-stakeholder effort to come up with a really great document that we think could be useful across the country. So that's the series that we have developed, and we're looking forward to carrying it out in the future. At the end, we'll be asking you a question related to some topics that we have in mind for future webinars, so we'd like you to hold on to the very end if you can. Again, you can go look for those webinars and register for future ones at the link at the bottom. But today we're really, before we get started, I have some housekeeping items to go through. You might have noticed that all attendees have been muted upon entering the webinar to minimize the background noise. So you can speak at will because you have been muted. You won't be able to be heard by anybody. We'd ask if you have any questions to please type those into the chat box on the lower right hand of your screen, and we'll have a dedicated time for questions and answers later in the webinar. As I said before, this webinar will be posted on our WaterSense website and on the Alliance for Water Efficiency's YouTube channel after the call. Before we begin, though, we'd like to ask you a few poll questions. So first, we just want to kind of get an idea of who we have on the call today. So if you could just quickly identify who you are, just so we can get a sense of who's on the call. And we'll pull that answer up. It's always good for all of us to know who we're speaking to. Okay, so it looks like we have a good mix of water utilities, local and state governments, and we do have a number of irrigation professionals on the line as well, so that's good. Our second poll question is just to check out where you're calling from. So if you could just let us know what part of the country you're calling from. I think on some of these calls we've seen a lot of people from the West. And perhaps that's going to hold true again here today. Isn't surprising given the water issues. And so once again, the West is winning the race, followed by the Southeast and other parts of the country. So thanks for answering those couple of questions so we know who we're speaking to. And now we'll go ahead and get on to the main part of our program. The topic for today's webinar is on relationship building between the irrigation professionals and water utilities. And we're pleased to have three great speakers from the West Coast. Melissa Baum-Haley, who is the Principal Water Resources Specialist for the Municipal Water District of Orange County. Sergio Ramirez, who is the Water Use Efficiency Administrator with the Laguna Beach County Water District. And Glen Froelich, who owns a landscape firm in San Clemente, California. So we're going to go ahead and get started with Melissa. Melissa, can you speak?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you're at. So we're going to, Sergio, Glenn, and I are going to go through a PowerPoint presentation and discussion on how to successfully create relationships between irrigation professionals and the utilities in hopes that we can help foster water-efficient landscape irrigation within our communities. And the reason we are doing this presentation collaboratively is because it is really a multi-wave approach. We cannot have such a dynamic without all of us working together. Now, what I mean by that is we're not going to just have targeted programs and events, direct install type programs or rebates, but we also need to go to the landscape professionals and not just make them come to you. So if we could please just move on to the next slide. Thank you. So in this moment, I'm actually going to be a little bit unconventional here and start at the end rather at the beginning. As a water utility, one of the best ways that we can reach the irrigation professionals that we work with or that we're looking to work with is to go to them rather than have them always have to come to us. And one of the ways that we have done that is to participate in groups and sponsor programs. For example, we have the a beautification award where we have added funds to help sponsor a beautification award that's put on by a landscaping group. And the way that this makes us go to them rather than come to us is it becomes something that without us even having to say, please make a water efficient landscape, there's now an award within their own industry that they may want to achieve without realizing that it is intentional, and they may want to just be known as a landscaper or irrigation designer who has implemented a great water efficient landscape. And so that's sort of an end result, is that it becomes completely organic, that naturally this is something that an irrigation professional is going to strive to. We can't always end there. So to start at the beginning, we're going to talk a bit about some targeted programs and events and some financial incentives. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Thanks. And so looking at some of these financial incentives, I'm going to begin by actually explaining a difference between rebates and direct installations. And this is actually a really important discussion. It's the importance of options. Having the consumer be empowered to choose the device, to choose the contractor, and have the decision in their hands. So one of our practices is actually not to recommend a specific contractor. That said, there are calls that come in very regularly asking for specific recommendations, which is not something that we in practice do. We do not recommend a specific contractor or a specific device. So how are we going to get around that? So over time, we've taken two approaches to generate, for lack of a better term, lists. When we look at devices, for example, when we look at weather-based irrigation controllers, we can rely on a WaterSense list to provide us a number of choices for the consumer to pick from. When we're looking at contractors, however, we don't always have a list that's readily available in our local area for the specific need of what's being installed. And so one of the things that we've done, in addition to having people that are, for example, partners with WaterSense or having a list in that way, we've asked for a request for qualifications. And so that's how we're able to look at someone to say, this is someone that we're not necessarily recommending, but on a list of people, they've met these specific qualifications. They have such a certification, or they are such a partner. And those lists of qualifications may vary based on the program. For example, we had a specific direct install program where a small handful of devices were selected, and a small handful of contractors met the qualifications of installing this device. Then the customer was able to go onto the website, pick from these devices that met the criteria we needed, and pick from a handful of contractors that were not just qualified, but also trained. This gave us two benefits. One, we were very well aware of the training that they received because we helped implement it. And two, if a customer was not happy, they were hopefully not going to place blame back onto the entity that was providing the direct install, but we were actually able to help set them up with another contractor to come and remediate those issues. And I should actually say in this program, in that specific program, there are very few issues because as part of the program dynamic, when the contractor went out to install the device, they actually did a site, a soft audit, where they were able to say, this device itself is not going to solve all the problems that we see that your system may need. Glen, who will be speaking in a few moments, was actually one of the contractors on that direct install program. Conversely, we have rebates, where there could be a rebate for example, not shown on the screen here, a spray to drip conversion. And when we're doing something that may not be as readily done within the community, we do get, again, the calls. Do you have recommended contractors? In this case, we have specific trainings on the installation of that product, of those products. And while we were not able to say that here are contractors that we're going to recommend, we were able to say here are contractors that participated in our training. Next slide, please. So now going into the concept of expos and events. With rebates and with direct installs, we are really reaching people who are ready to make a change. But when we look at expos and events, the first thing that we want to do is reach out to those people and let them know this is a change you may want to be making. It's a great opportunity to bundle education and marketing all into one really exciting day. One of the most interesting expos that happen within Orange County is the Laguna Beach County Water District Smartscape Info Expo. And I'm going to ask Sergio to please tell us a bit about that.
Thank you, Melissa, and thank you everybody for joining this webinar series. So just to provide a little background, the Laguna Beach County Water District, we service about 25,000 people. We have 8,000 connections, and we are a beach town where the topography changes from we have hilly, mountainous areas, so we deal a lot with runoff and slope erosion. So for us, it's also very important to keep in mind those issues when we are providing water conservation programs to our service area and our community as a whole. This event, it's the Smartscape Info Expo. We're actually gearing up for our 6th one in September. And basically the concept of this expo is to invite the community for an opportunity to learn about water conservation, about sustainability, and to sign them up for our direct install program. We provide them with the vendors for the manufacturers of the smart timers, of the high efficiency sprinkler nozzles, and of drip irrigation that they can ask questions about. Along with the vendors, we also invite our contractors that are going to be part of our direct install program. Again, like Melissa was saying, we do go through an RFQ, a request for qualification, on these contractors to submit their background and information on their contract business that they have experience on, and make sure that we can qualify them for the program. Now, they too have a booth at this expo event, and we invite all of our community members to speak with each one of them and make a decision at this 2-day event to pick their contractor for a direct install. And then thirdly, we also have a local college, Saddleback College, and their Department of Horticulture and Landscape Design. We actually invite the students of that department to volunteer their time and efforts to provide anyone who was interested in our direct install program with a landscape design template for them to work off of when time comes to start their projects. Next slide, please. So I kind of went over this already, but basically these photos show there's a lot of activity on this two-day event or for the weekend. We asked the community to kind of peruse the area, get ideas of the type of smart timer that they would want to install. Again, knowing that there's a limited number of manufacturers that we allow into our program. We usually go with no more than 3 or 4 smart timers and 2 different high efficiency nozzle manufacturers into the program. That said, the contractors themselves, they have their preferences obviously, but we always want to make sure that the contractor and the applicant, the customer homeowner, are in agreement with what would work best on their landscape. Let's see. Next slide, please. So the direct install program, there's a set process after the application is submitted. Again, right now we only offer this to single-family residents. We want to make sure that when we go on site, we're able to identify an irrigation system that is poorly maintained and is in need of some repair that can actually garner water savings and benefit from the replacement of an old timer to a new smart timer. In concept, that's a fairly easy thing, but what we have found is when we go on site, the replacement of a timer is not enough. We see lateral line breaks, we see poorly designed systems, broken sprinkler heads that would definitely benefit from new installations of the high efficiency nozzles. But there are other elements of a system that we identified during that pre-inspection that that would need to also be addressed during this program. And so that being said, the contractors definitely give us feedback, and Glen would will be providing some examples of what are the other issues that arise at a site. Because for us as a water agency, although we are providing our customer base with an opportunity to install new devices that will eventually save water, they don't necessarily see the other components of water savings when it comes to their landscape. A lot of the issues or the callbacks that we get is, I have this smart timer installed by your district, and we've had our retrofit project completed, but I'm still finding that my water usage is not where I want it to be, and so those sort of questions and issues need to, I guess we need to put more effort into finding out what other issues within the irrigation system need to be fixed when we're offering these direct install programs. So if you go on to the next slide, we'll have Glen Froelich with Glen's Landscape kind of just go through more or less what his experiences have been. We've worked with Glen multiple years both in the expo, the Smartscape Info Expo, and with direct install programs.
Hi everybody, again thanks for tuning in. My name is Glen Froelich, and I've been a landscape contractor. I started as a young child mowing lawns like most guys out there, and I've been a licensed contractor for 34 years. I got into this type of work because as I was working in the landscapes out there, I tended to identify lower water plants, and I'm an affinity for native style landscaping. So I started working with some of the suppliers of the irrigation components and with the water districts as well and some of the rebate programs to get more efficiency for my clients in the field. And that brought me into the program, what we're trying to do today. One of the things of working with your agency is to have a really good communication when you're in the field. I try to keep it to emails. Phone calls are great, but emails give you some documentation so that you can be responsible to your agency, whether it's MoDOC or Laguna County Water. And we have to have a high level of follow-up with the customers. In an expo program, you're actually meeting these people face-to-face, usually for the first time, and they're going to come at you with a variety of questions about their landscape that you may have never seen, and sometimes it's hard to imagine. And other ones will walk in with a small diagram and a plan and ask you to adapt that. What we've learned from that is that we need to be very proactive and set up extra time during the pre-inspection process for that type of a client. The other thing is you have to contact the client, and usually several times, to make sure they're going to be there when you arrive. I think the post-inspectors will talk about that as well, that a lot of the programs that we're offering, they're walking in and the program is, you know, an incentive for them. And so to get their buy-in, you have to really get them to commit to be there and spend some time with you during that pre-evaluation. Most of the time, especially here in Laguna, the clients are really, this area is really interested in water savings, and, you know, in general, they're very pretty tech savvy, and their motivation is to get their water bill down, and that's how we approach it with them, to get their usage down. Even with all the devices that we have, there's really no good substitute for a low usage design. So there are times when we meet up with a client where there's an unusual amount of turf in their yard or unused turf, and we try to explain to them that the best way to get at saving with that would be to convert that over to a native or low water style landscape. Those are the main things that we deal with when we meet them. Obviously, we want to be super friendly. We're motivated as well. We want their project, and we want to see the program succeed. So that's why we're here.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. So a lot of what the direct install program is trying to do is really get the owner to understand that although this direct install is going to hopefully change the way that it will change the way that your irrigation system will function. The education aspect of this is hopefully going to let the owner change the way that the owner has interacted with their timer, even their landscape, maybe pay attention more to what it is that the watering needs are for each of their zones. Although the project is once the project is completed, at that point, hopefully the homeowner understands that there's a quality of or a quantity of maintenance and attention that needs to be put into both the timer, the system as a whole, and their landscape. So yeah. So
thank you, Sergio. Thank you, Glenn.
So now we're coming back to Melissa?
Yes, and I think we're just waiting for the next slide.
Okay.
Okay, so Sergio and Glenn have highlighted two key points that we'd like to make sure to reiterate. The consumer ownership and responsibility for their choices. For as important as it is that we have this interaction between the utility and the irrigation professional, we want to make sure that from the perspective of the consumer, it was actually their choice. As MODOC is a wholesaler for nearly all of Orange County, each area of the county will benefit from a different set of tools. We also have implemented over the last number of years a forum called H2O for HOAs. And this is a targeted outreach program that aims to provide homeowner associations with information regarding water-efficient irrigation techniques, how to eliminate runoff, integrated pest management. A number of different topics have been touched on during these presentation-style seminar days with a tad of interaction. So it actually includes on as oftentimes part of these, not just presentations, but also interaction with the contractors or different manufacturers that will set up booths. This appeals to the people who are hiring the irrigation professionals. It's one of the best ways that we can collaborate is not just to say, here is a professional that we think would help you with the implementation of your water efficient landscape, but we will go out to the homeowner association and say, this is why. This is why it's important that you prioritize an efficient water use at your landscape. We have actually received very good response from a number of the HOAs. Sometimes it's just the board members were uninformed and they're really focused on the bottom line or the budget within their management practice and not necessarily how to get there. There's a misunderstanding that because their property manager is actually who hires the irrigation professional, they are not able to connect those dots. And so with this forum, it's an opportunity to help connect those dots. Can we go on to the next slide? Not all areas of the county, of course, are going to have HOAs. So a second way that we can focus on appealing to people of the importance of using the irrigation professional is through a program that we refer to as an Orange County Garden Friendly program. And this is a partnership between various garden supplies and home improvement stores. Oftentimes they will hold an outdoor plant sale, bringing in plants that are more climate appropriate, highlighting water efficient landscape devices with vendor displays, and from time to time even special discounts that are ideal for, in this case, our area. This is spread to not just Southern California, but actually I've heard that it's been spreading across the country. There are two great benefits from this. The first is we're educating the consumer that while there are many things that they can do themselves, from time to time, you may want to reach out for help. And we do that through our conversations with them. We're educating the consumer that there are options in the marketplace. And then when we look at the marketplace, we're able to educate the marketplace that this is the direction that we want to go. We want to help highlight devices and highlight appropriate plants within their stores. We've had a number of stores that have, since these events, continued to highlight those devices and those plants that were given interest as part of this Garden Friendly program. But what does that do? That helps the consumer realize this is the direction they want to go, and if it's something that they don't understand, they will then reach out to the irrigation professionals that are knowledgeable about that. Next slide, please. We're going to take a little bit of a shift here, and I'm going to touch briefly on a few value-added resources and tools. And these are resources that we've developed to help the irrigation professional set the framework. Next slide. So the first resource is actually quite abstract. In fact, some of the other the other comments or programs that we've spoken about have an underlying abstract principle that is exactly this. It's the understanding of the desired outcomes and the accountability of performance. It's making sure that the people who are looking to work with the irrigation and landscape professionals to know what they want. This may be achieved through conversation between the property owner, the property manager, the landscape contractor. As a utility, one of the things that we're trying to do is help set the stage and provide resources to make that be a very fluid conversation. As we've mentioned a number of times, it's important to have good understanding of the pulse of the industry. Where are we going? Where do we want to go? Where do we need to go? Through the RFQs that we mentioned previously, we're able to see what kind of qualifications do the professionals in our communities have. Are they getting the kind of qualifications? Are they qualified in a way that we want? Do we need additional training? Can we help educate them on ways that they can then sell their ability to reduce water bills or decrease runoff? And having that conversation between the professional and the people that are hiring them is very, very helpful. Increasing the communication among the key parties is pivotal to having these desired outcomes achieved. Can we move on to the next slide, please? When looking at one of the concrete examples, we can talk about return on investment calculators. This provides a bottom line. It helps make a business case for water efficiency. And as a professional, that sometimes is the best way to appeal to those people that are hiring you. So let them know exactly where they can save money. Save money by using less water. And in some cases, there are even additional multiple benefits. For example, have a reduction of hardscape repair. If there is less over-irrigation onto or overspray onto a hardscape area, then the need for continued maintenance on that hardscape will be minimized, a common practice. So by looking at these bottom lines, that can help sell the water efficiency. When we look at this return on investment calculator, which by the way can be found on the ocwatersmart.com website, we've narrowed it down to only 3 ways to save water. To help try to keep this approach very simple, you can reduce the site water requirements. Glenn mentioned that before. We can increase irrigation system efficiencies through changes of devices, for example, as Sergio mentioned in his direct install program. Or you can improve the management practices. Improving the management practices can go a very long way. Having qualified professionals can help make that happen. When focusing on the improvement of the management practices, an example program that I'm going to just talk about for a moment is the Water Smart Landscape Program. So this is a program that establishes a landscape irrigation budget for dedicated irrigation meters, often used in large commercial settings. It provides monthly irrigation performance reports to the landscape contractor as well as the managers and the owners to help keep that loop of accountability or triangle of accountability there and the lines of communication very active. It's a way to measure use and the effectiveness of management over time. Having a finger on how the water is being applied, when it's being applied, appropriate for the season, the plant material, and knowing how much water is being applied to that site compared to a budget tends to be a very good communication tool, as well as a tool for the irrigation professional to be able to turn back to the people who have hired them and show them how well they have been doing. When speaking about how well they've been doing, we can also talk about a template that we have for performance-based irrigation management contracts. And this is, again, a tool for the irrigation professional. It's an outcome-based approach to contracting that uses irrigation scheduling performance measures to define the minimum irrigation efficiency standards that must be met by the contractor. It's also a template in Word format that is available for you to modify to make it most appropriate for your needs. It's completely adaptable, customizable, and flexible. And I should also mention that it is a no-cost template that we have available for you on our website. It's intended to complement the maintenance contract by including specific budget-based monitoring component. It's a carrots approach. This is how much water we should be using. This is how much water we did use. As somebody who would be then implementing this, you can have a nice direct comparison of landscape bids. So a property manager, for example, they would like that many people would use the same management contract because it allows for them to have an apples-to-apples comparison of those landscape bids. To elaborate just a bit on the steps of this performance-based irrigation management contract, the idea is that you would define the scope of work, set up the request for proposals, select the contractor. There would be some type of transition period or establishment period as necessary, especially if there have been any changes to the landscape. Then continued monthly irrigation performance evaluation, like one of the budget reporting tools mentioned previously. As far as the carrots-based approach, we would say perhaps after the first quarter, do a performance evaluation, and then have implementation. During the implementation period, there would be penalties or rewards based on how the site's being managed, based on that assumed budget. But sometimes it's not just the budget, it's not just how much water, but it's the other desired outcomes, the aesthetics, reduction of runoff. There are other multiple benefits that can be included here. I hope that through the different examples of programs and targeted programs and events that we highlighted here, some of the explanation between the financial incentives, where we look at either rebates as compared to a direct install, will highlight some of the importance of the multiple wave approach that we were referring to. That it cannot just be saying, you're a great contractor, this is who we're going to recommend for all of our programs, but that there's many different ways, many different tools that would reach the right type of audience. And just to go back to the very beginning, which was really the very end, don't always make the irrigation professionals come to you. As a utility, it's oftentimes very important to make sure that you go to them, providing device and incentive program trainings, surveying the industry to get a feel for their current pulse, or tools and resources that provide value to the irrigation professionals in their industry, such as management contract templates or sponsoring beautification awards. You can go to the next slide.
Sorry. Sorry about that. So, Melissa, do you have anything else to say before we?
No, that was my wrap-up. We just hadn't gone to the next slide yet.
Okay. So thank you very much for all of those great presentations, you guys. We've had a number of questions come in, but we want to give everybody the opportunity, if they still have some, to go ahead and put those in the chat box. And you'll note here on the slide, we also have the contact information and the relevant websites for the organizations that we're speaking today. So we're going to throw up a few poll questions. As you're answering them, go ahead and type your chat questions in, and then we'll come over to the questions, of which there are several. So the poll questions, quickly, we want to get a sense of what you guys are seeing out in the field. So Are you seeing a trend of irrigation systems moving away from the typical sprinkler system to drip irrigation in the areas you're working? These are very simple yes/no questions. So it's 50-50, it looks pretty 50-50. The next question is, are you seeing a shift in consumer preference for weather-based irrigation controllers over the typical clock timer controllers? Okay, so again, see, and then again, it's about 50-50. So that's interesting. So the next one speaks to somewhat what we were talking about here today. We want to know before we get into our questions, have you collaborated if you're a utility with irrigation professionals or vice versa? If you're an irrigation professional, have you, go ahead and launch that one, have you coordinated or collaborated with a utility? And maybe you haven't, but after you've heard the presentation today, you want to start doing that. All right, so it looks like there is some collaboration going on or desire to do so. And then the last question we have is one that actually Melissa asked us to query. For utilities who are on the line or local governments, do you have to complete a request for qualification or similar before you can actually go ahead and partner with an irrigation professional?
Limited how many we could ask.
Oh, and we were limited with how many we could ask. So apparently we don't have that question teed up. I just realized. I apologize, Melissa, but if people do use our ideas, go ahead and just type that in the chat box. We can always pull those out later for Melissa. So we have had a number of questions that have been asked. So I think we'll go ahead and get started on those, and we'll leave about 5 minutes before the hour. We'll go back and cover some additional information before we close out the webinar. Yeah, Laura is here, Wessel is here, and she's going to help us with the questions.
Yeah, thanks for all the questions. I think we'll start towards back to the beginning of Melissa's presentation, kind of talking about her contractor program that they have set up. How did you determine which contractors could participate in the program, and how did you determine if they were qualified? Could anyone just sign up?
No, they couldn't just sign up. They would have to either submit, depending on the program. We've done it 2 different ways. So in one program, we have a number of different programs, but I'll give you 2 examples. In one program, they would have to submit a request for qualifications, which basically means we had an RFQ written up that asked specific questions regarding their qualifications, certifications, licensure, and different partners. They then submitted that to us. If they met our minimum requirement, and again, the minimum requirement may vary depending on what the program is, they would then be listed as a contractor who meets the criteria needed or the qualifications needed for that program. Those lists are generated program by program and then would be posted, for example, along with the program application or information. Not any contractor who filled it out would necessarily meet those qualifications. They would not then be listed. I should also specify that in this case, the contractors are listed for the program, not a general certification or consent to partner with the agency for all needs. We steered away from that some years ago because we would have contractors that would come around and continue to represent themselves as certified by our entity, or represent themselves as partners with our entity. And while they may not be implementing the practices that at the time we are now trying to implement. And so it's program specific. The other approach was to hold specific trainings. And that was my example of the spray to drip program, where we held a specific training on the correct installation of the drip irrigation. If a contractor was going to be listed, we wanted to ensure that they were going to install it using best practices. And so this one was a little different. Now, it wasn't that they met all of the qualifications, but it was that they participated in a training that was hosted by a combination between the irrigation manufacturer as well as the distribution house. So it was a partnership training between ourselves, the manufacturer, and a distribution house.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. That's very helpful.
And people are very curious about the Smartscape Info Expo event. So how many people typically come to this event, and is it geared primarily for the residential community, or do commercial facility or property managers also attend?
Yeah, so in the past, we've seen over the two-day weekend, like maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, we had about 500 people pass through the two-day weekend. Last year's event, we counted over 1,000 people over the two-day weekend, and a lot of that flow of people coming into the expo has to do with a local farmers market that occurs here every Saturday. So that definitely helps us with our numbers. In general, yes, the expo does target single-family residents and residents in the area. But the vendors that are here, along with the nonprofit organizations, they also see a number of business owners come in wanting to know more information on maybe the different types of plants that can be installed, or any devices that can be replaced in their irrigation systems. But predominantly it would be residential, since our water accounts, we're roughly 80% residential and 20% commercial businesses, hotels. So that kind of drives the attendance, the attendance classification for our expo.
I might just highlight something that Sergio mentioned, and that was the keen use of other high traffic events such as the farmers market. We have also found with the Orange County Garden Friendly program, selecting venues that are have high foot traffic does help bring in better numbers of people.
Yeah, that's a really smart strategy, and similar audiences that could be interested as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A lot of attendees are curious about how you're verifying the savings from your program, and this, applies to both Melissa and Sergio. What's success for you?
So on our end, we have looked at collecting. We look at the historical usage. It is a little bit difficult now to look at our most recent programs, water savings, and how this direct program has affected or decreased any individual residents participating in the program, mainly because in the past few years there's been a lot of media coverage on the drought. There's also we also host other programs and promotional marketing materials that get the word out on water conservation. So it does make it a little bit more difficult for us to pinpoint water savings directly to the direct install program. Another thing that makes it difficult for us is the relatively small sample size that we have of residents participating in the program. We're looking at anywhere between 50 applicants on a bad year. On good years, we have over 100. But that water savings analysis, for us, we still need to wait for more data to come in. So that is an issue for us, but that's something that, at least in our district, we are trying to obtain some level of water conservation, at least some guarantee that with the installation of devices that we would get some water savings. I know that in general we there is a number that is expected, a water savings number that is expected per installation of smart timer, along with per nozzle, per high efficiency nozzle. So we can extract those numbers on a general basis, but in order for us to confirm it, it does become a little more difficult.
So Sergio did mention a few of the challenges of the current climate, for pardon the pun there, that we have to deal with when it comes to water savings. That said, within Orange County, and Laguna Beach County Water District is one of the MODOC member agencies, we have consistently done both process and impact evaluations. We do these on all of our programs. We do about one process and impact evaluation at least per year. That said, we do cycle through the different programs. And the reason we do that is so that we can take that industry assumed water savings value, the metric that Sergio, for example, mentioned, and see, are we in fact achieving that water savings metric over time. And so now, for example, with smart timers, I think we've done 6 or 8 different evaluations, and we continue to take that data. These are actual water use, so historic compared to post-implementation evaluations. Look at that pre and post water use, and come up with an actual water savings with the removal of as much noise as possible. We do that to see is there a change in the water savings as devices change, or over a long period of time, is there some rebound effect that is also occurring. And we do that for a number of different programs, the smart timers, the nozzles. We are approaching that on landscape conversion and drip irrigation this coming year. We find that to be infinitely important. I think there's no end to the importance of doing those types of evaluations, both for the impact as well as the process. And the process would be to see if the approach we've taken to run the program is effective.
Yeah, that's really helpful to know.
Yeah, it is. I imagine it is hard to tease out the drought versus non-drought savings.
This will be a tough year, yeah.
Yeah. But I will say that I really respect your utility, Melissa, for doing that research to really try and document the savings from the different types of programs that you run. So, and usually you guys make those reports available to others to learn from. So it's very valuable to the sector.
Thank you.
We've had a lot of great specific questions that we'll have the speakers follow up with you, or we'll follow up with you after the call. So we'll just do one more kind of broad, quick tips on how do you form a relationship with irrigation contractors to begin with. Do you have tips for that?
One thing that we've done is participate in the CLCA or other similar groups where we can reach out to contractors. We go to them. I guess that's the short answer. Go to where they are and try to introduce ourselves to them. If we only have them come to us, then we're going to only be appealing to those contractors that are already conservation-minded. And it's twofold. It's one, to reach the audience. It's also to educate those that didn't yet know that this is a direction we'd like to go in. Sergio, you are in a smaller, you're dealing with a smaller service area. So
yeah.
You may have a slightly different perspective.
Yeah, so here in Laguna Beach, there are a lot of nonprofit organizations that are environmentally sustainable minded, and so most recently we've participated in a local garden tour of sustainable landscapes, which does bring out a lot of residents and also landscape contractors and architects that we can network with, and that, that being said, there's also an opportunity for us as a water district to work with the Chamber of Commerce through different presentations that they host as a luncheon on sustainability and new regulations that can affect the building process of new homes, of major renovations. So as a water use efficiency administrator here in our local area, I tried to attend presentations to keep those core organizations up to speed with both the state regulations, any anticipated ordinances or programs that will be affecting the said organization or businesses that are in attendance in these groups and presentations. Glenn might also have some input.
Yeah, I did hear Melissa mention the CLCA. That's the California Landscape Contractors Association. I've been a member of that for a number of years, and they have an awards program, and we've been participating in that as well for a number of years. And what the CLCA does is it brings out like-minded, quality-minded contractors together, and that's a great way to reach out to contractors. They have a website, and they are doing kind of an internal quality control. They don't just accept whoever walks in the door to be a member. They vet them, and they're trying to bring the industry as a whole up to a higher standard. There's also some test agencies that are out there. Some of them are statewide, some of them are national, that they work with EPA, WaterSense, and they have certification programs. That's another good way to go. What we were talking about also is in getting feedback from our clients on the water savings. That's really, really important to us to see if we're hitting the target and to see if we're missing the target, where the water's going. So we encourage our clients to let us in with a copy of their water bill when we start and a copy of their water bill 60 days down the line. And we kind of run them seasonally with some of our larger clients as well. Ongoing monitoring shouldn't be just the agencies. It should be an astute contractor's and client's responsibility. And in that way, everybody's got buy-in on it, and we're aware of how well we're doing out there in the field.
Thank you, Glenn. I should also mention one other thing. When we're trying to reach a residential audience, it's pretty easy to do something like a bill stuffer. But if you're trying to actually reach out to the landscape contractors and irrigation professionals, it's not that easy. So one of the things that we've done is we've created informational flyers that we then put on the tabletops at distribution houses. So for example, at a location like a Hydroscape or a Ewing, we would be able to promote some of the information, our want to engage, someplace where those professionals are going.
Okay, great, Melissa. So thank you guys for answering those questions. And as we said, we'll get those of you we didn't get to, we'll get those questions to our participants here today so they can respond to you. We're going to quickly go through a few WaterSense resources, some of which you guys have already heard. So hopefully people can stay on the call for a few more minutes. I think everybody mentioned the California Landscape Contractors Association, and that is one of the programs that we label here at WaterSense, programs that certify irrigation professionals who know water efficiency and are trained on irrigation design, installation, maintenance, and auditing. And so there are 8 programs that we have labeled that offer 20 programs across the country. A number of them in California to the Irrigation Association, the Qualified Water Efficiency Leadership Program as well. And those, we have more than 2,300 people that have been certified by this program. And so I want to make you aware that if you're not already, if you're an irrigation professional on the call and you haven't been certified by a labeled program, this will allow you to see what those programs are and seek certification. If you're a utility, it will allow you to know what programs exist. And then we also have developed this tool that you can go on and search within your geographic area to find professionals who have been certified. So if you're looking to try and identify some professionals, some low-hanging fruit, people who've already been trained in water efficiency, this might be a good thing to check out and see if you can find people in your area. The other thing is, I know we probably have a lot of WaterSense partners on the call, but because we also opened this to the public, we might have some local governments or water utilities that are not currently WaterSense partners. And I just want to encourage you, if you're not, to join us. We have more than 1,700 partners across the country. I think water utilities, state and local governments, nonprofits, associations, home building associations fall under our promotional partner category. And we have lots of resources that are available to you. We do separate webinars that are just for our partners. We give a lot of materials to our partners. We work with people like Melissa and Sergio to develop case studies that we share with you. So I would encourage you, if you're not already, to go ahead and check our website and sign up to be a WaterSense partner. So the last thing is we just have that one more poll question that we wanted to put out here to try and get a sense of some topics that you might be interested in for future webinars. So go ahead and select all that apply here from the 4 that are listed. If you have one that you are really interested in seeing and it's not listed here, go ahead and type that in the chat box and we can look for that after the call. And you'll see on that site too, we have the Alliance for Water Efficiency and the WaterSense outdoor pages. We encourage you guys to visit that and also to follow us on social media. Both of our programs are pretty good about being regular posters on both Facebook and Twitter. So it looks like we've got a fair percentage who have voted, and the numbers seem to indicate that efficient irrigation alternatives is a good option, and using weather-based controllers are still, I think, some people who are not completely comfortable with those types of technologies. So that's helpful information for us as we go forward and plan for our next webinars. So thank you again for participating today. Thank you, Melissa, Glen, and Sergio, for your great presentations. These will be available. The recording will be available, and so you can follow up and share that with friends after the call. So thank you again, everybody, and have a great afternoon and a wonderful Memorial Day holiday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.